Katan opening the sutra. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see everybody here, coming from all over the country, all over the world, all the different lands. All these beings from different places, backgrounds, ages, professions,
Do you want to fix it?
etc.,
Better fix it.
and so forth.
Better.
Thanks. So we're all together in this room, in this place, sitting, walking, stewing, dreaming, realizing, crying, laughing, and I could go on, and it's all at the same time. So I guess what I could say is striking me about the Vimalakirti Sutra right now, which I have to confess I didn't reread for this session this year, but I guess the thing about it for me that stayed with me, that I carried with me from reading it whenever I did do that, was really his room. The quality of space in that room, of making room for everyone and everything that was there. I mean, in this scenario, it was to debate the nature of emptiness, but really it could be anything. Beings that would normally not be together, or that we think would not normally be together, is in itself an expression of emptiness. Nothing left out. And I was thinking about how we could look at this room as a metaphor for the mind of each of us. How do we make room for the fullness of ourselves and everyone else? It sounds very grand, and it's not easy to do. You know, between the daily words of our Shuso Seiryu and our wonderful new abbot, Myoko Roshi, we've sort of been getting these twice daily, like really wonderful, potent mini Dharma talks. And in some ways it's like feels like really nothing else needs to be said in a way. Myoko Roshi keeps reminding us to just let it all drop. All our ideas, our assumptions, expectations for what this Zen retreat should be, and to just be open and fully present to what's here right now. And our Shuso keeps reminding us in one way or another to notice and be open to and relate to just everything we encounter, inside and out. As we said in the very beginning of the Sesshin, an Ango entry, just give yourself over to everyday mind. Nothing is more sacred than this. Ourselves and our lives, just as they are. And it's a mystery, as to why it's so difficult for us to do this seemingly very simple thing. But it does seem to be that we just, I'm pretty sure each of us have this relentless, and I do mean relentless, need or desire for everything, including ourselves, to be someone, something, someplace different, or just something else than what it is. And if we think about it for even like a minute, we realize that that's of course impossible. But that doesn't stop us. So we come here into this room to alleviate our suffering, really, which is what brought us all here, honestly, through practice. And for many of us, this means learning or relearning, I should say, because I think, well, speaking for myself, many of us never actually learned how to do that. So to simply be ourselves in our lives, with ourselves, and with others, which can be the tricky part, and to find some peace, to actually just appreciate and enjoy being alive in the midst of all our difficulty. Not just when we're fortunate enough to be at some pool or on the beach or this wherever. I would like to be at the beach. So I think we can tend to think that our suffering and difficulty is all about what's wrong with the world and others outside of us. And perhaps on the other side of that is thinking our suffering is all about what's wrong with ourselves and the world inside of us. But either way, we can get really lost fixating on what is wrong and how we or it, whatever that is, should be, like I said, something else. And it's so deep and so habitual that we're not aware much of the time that we're actually doing that. Our minds can become like these tightly wound springs that are just ready to twang into inner critique mode at the slightest provocation or seeming threat. And this happens before or faster even than the blink of an eye. And it happens probably hundreds of times in a day, again, without our even being aware that we're doing it. And that's just our discriminating, judging minds in action. So this constant judging of the world, of ourselves, and others really can just squeeze the life and joy out of anything and everything. So what do we do? Well, this is going to be a surprise. We most miraculously, actually, and powerfully come to sit zazen with others, not by ourselves, and that's really not a small thing. Because I'm sure pretty much everyone in this room does sit regularly at home. But there is just something so palpably and powerfully different about sitting this much with others. It might not be the only way, but it's the most powerful way I've found to loosen the grip of, our innate greed, anger, ignorance, and fear, which are the root of basically all of our suffering. So, as Shinryu advised us in the very beginning of Sesshin, I want to again encourage everyone to remember to just give yourself over to the form of this session. All these forms have actually gradually evolved over hundreds, I don't know, possibly 1,000, more than 1,000 years, I'm not sure, but a long, really, really long time, to hold us and to help us see and free ourselves from the prisons that really live actually inside our own minds, nowhere else. It's kind of like putting bars on the sky. So you could say form and space, or energy, or call it that, or not, too. They're not really separate. And we keep hearing this again and again. But they are also not the same. And in this way, they affect and shift each other through relationship. And relationship is the heart, I think, of why we can't do this by ourselves. Because we need others to see ourselves. And to annoy us. But that very annoyance is the window. I guess I've probably said this before, but as a potter, I am very interested in sort of more concrete aspects of form and space. And it doesn't ever, even after 40 years, cease to amaze me how literally just a 1/16 of an inch on even the simplest of forms, and in some ways especially the simplest of forms, completely changes it. Changes how it sits, how it holds space, how it moves or doesn't move. It completely changes its state of being and expression in the world. Just this much. And unless you're really looking, you don't even see that there's a difference. But you can feel there's a difference. And I think this is why that I've heard in so many traditions, Japan for one, that with potters they would often be required in early days to make something like 10,000 just straight cylinders before going on to any other form. Because everything you're going to use to make any other form is in a cylinder. You know, and by now I've probably made, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of them. And I'm still learning, and I'm actually still amazed at how challenging they are and how subtle they can be. And just so happy and thrilled when somehow, which is actually at the end of the day beyond my control, when it works out in a way that sort of sings or that is alive. And it is actually because it's beyond my control. Like, we set it up so things can happen, but then we have to let go. And that's not easy. And in some ways, the more experienced we become, the harder it is to let go. Which is, I think, why Shiryu Suzuki, you know, and in Zen in general, beginner's mind is so precious because there's much more room for that to happen. It was very surprising to me because I once heard Al Pacino speaking about acting in some I guess video or podcast or something. And the interviewer was asking him about what was his favorite mode of acting. Was it film or was it theater? Because, I mean, I only know him as a film actor, and, you know, he's pretty good. But he said, and which totally shocked me, that his favorite thing to do was theater. And that it was actually very different than doing film, and why? He said because of the repetition. So it's like if you're doing a play or in the theater, you could be doing, and you might feel this way as musicians in the room playing something, you know, like you play, in the case of this, the same thing twice a day, every day sometimes, for up to a year. And it was because of that that he actually found the greatest freedom and creativity actually to emerge. That doesn't happen any other way. Because there's something about those circumstances that allow it to be born as opposed to for us to make it. It's very mysterious. And it's so counterintuitive to how we think about repetition, especially here in this country where it's like, you know, like if you're doing the same thing, you know, even like for more than a month, it's like, it's boring, it's old news, it's time to move on. In so many different arenas, you know, we are really conditioned to be thinking that everything is supposed to be always completely new and completely different all the time. But this kind of difference is actually often very superficial. And I think it leads to a lack of quality and a kind of difference that's more subtle, but perhaps more profound and actually more meaningful and powerful. And I'm bringing this up, you know, because of, I guess it's pretty obvious what we're doing here. You know, when we come to retreat, I mean, I think we really see how much the repetition of form is a huge aspect of our practice. And, you know, it actually can serve us as a mirror or a window into where our minds are. It can allow us to notice different states of our being that we might not otherwise see when everything is different. You might notice, oh God, am I really distracted today? Or you might notice, wow, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety when I'm ringing the bell today that I didn't feel yesterday. Or, wow, I'm really spaced out. Was I supposed to hit that drum? Or really tightly wound, as the ching, like, or how did that happen? Where did that come from? Or just lost in my head, like, was I supposed to do that? And so on and so forth. And there's so many layers and levels and opportunities for us to meet ourselves in this way. And we can sort of use them as subtle clues and sometimes not so subtle clues to look into what's not so visible always to us on the surface. It's not just what we do, but how we do it. And I'm not talking about it being good or bad, but it's more like, is it quiet or is it loud? Distracted or concentrated? Expressive or neutral? Just, are we relating to what's around us, or are we just lost in our mind? So the form can actually be like a comfort in which we can see, which we can use to see more deeply into ourselves. And all the different activities and movements can actually help us to affect and shift in real time how we feel. The activity itself shifts us. Maybe they help us to learn and to see how to tighten up, and maybe the opposite needs doing. Maybe we need to be louder and learn how to speak up, and maybe we need to learn how not to be quiet. Maybe we need to speed up, and maybe we need to slow down, and so on and so forth. There is no right or wrong way, it's just what's appropriate in the moment. And can we be open enough to meet that moment? So I think the repetition kind of allows for some kind of direct bridge between our unconscious and conscious mind. That's really helpful in illuminating this. It's not something we just think about. We actually see it, enact it, and through that feel it. And the other nice thing about the form is kind of the comfort of not having to think about what we're going to do next. We can actually just naturally follow along and do the next thing. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like there's just too much choice in this life. You want to turn on Netflix or just see a movie, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with which one of 500,000 things am I in the mood to watch? And it's like, oh God, this would be fun, but I'm not really in the mood for that. Maybe, it just becomes paralyzing, and then 2 hours have gone by and you're still trying to decide. And it's like, oh God, I'm just gonna go to bed. But a lot of our lives now, the world, it's just crazy. You also may notice that we just keep doing the same things thousands of times. I mean, in nature is like this, but actually when we look, it's always different. It's never the same sunrise, it's never the same sunset. And also how different somebody else is doing the very same thing. And so in this way, I think just the subtlest qualities of difference can begin to emerge in ways that we can palpably see, because it's so close. And this can teach and open us as we are held in the container that is created by form. You know, in a way, I think of the forms can be like the comfort, really, of a mother's arms. Speaking for myself, and perhaps some of you never actually had. So I really encourage you all to realize that none of this here is about being rigid or some idea of perfect, because that's just never going to happen. And it's also always happening. So in this container, you know, it's just very safe to be awake and to let your mind roam freely and see what arises and where it goes. As Seiryu or Shuso mentioned in one of those talks, just be curious and see what comes up, even and especially when it's difficult. Can we be curious there in the difficulty? Allow your mind to be like the sky, which is much like Vimalakirti's room, in which there's room for all and for everything. And you can trust that that doesn't mean that these thoughts and feelings are here to stay. The thing about visitors is that they also leave. You know, if we don't hold on to them. You know, the sky holds all kinds of weather, which is actually constantly shifting and changing, in sometimes predictable and mostly unpredictable ways, especially now. Rain, sun, clouds, mist, sometimes hurricanes, sometimes tornadoes. But we can know that it will always change. This is the nature of sky. We can't control it. But the more we are aware of it, the better we can work with it, meet it, be in it. And just like the sky, our minds actually have room for everything if we don't hold on. So I want to encourage you to be brave and to just let yourself simply make room for yourself as you are. And just see your fear, see your anger, your sadness, your joy, which can also be scary if that's an unfamiliar state to you. We can actually shut that down if we're not used to it. So be open to joy. But see all this with the mind of Zazen And this is the key to what we're doing here and why we're coming here, because we actually kind of have to learn how to do that without judgment and discrimination. It's so habitual and so deep. So see if you can just let what needs to emerge. And as soon as you notice yourself falling into familiar stories about what's emerging and why it's emerging, and that train of, oh God, here I am again. And you'll know that when it happens. Notice that, and then that's the time to just grab the broom of the breath and just let it sweep the mind. And remember to do it. And you start ready and open for the next breath, the next new breath, in the next moment. And you can trust that whatever needs to will return another time. And you can explore it at another time. But don't use your time on the cushion to solve your life. So, but just on another note, Sesshin can also and does really trigger things that can come up. Am I doing well or really badly? Or whatever the places that judgmental mind can go. Because this is relational with other people, and when we're doing anything with other people, shit comes up. And this is practice. It's transforming the shit into fertilizer. And inspired by our fertilizer. How we work with this. So I would encourage you to allow yourselves to not know what is going on. And in this way, maybe let yourself respond differently to a familiar scenario by simply being aware of it, which is not the same as trying to figure it out. What's happening in your body as well as in your mind? What feelings are arising? Don't just shut it down with explanations and excuses. So let's all carry on with some humility so that we can actually look at what we're so often ashamed of and try to hide at all costs. And let this looking be with love and with compassion. And this will make room inside the mind, just like Vimalakirti's room. And simply meet whoever and whatever shows up. Stay curious. If we approach the same old thing in a fresh, different, more open way, we allow the same old thing to also be different. And I love this quote of Dogen's. Break open a single particle and all the sutras grow clear. The great merit wheel of the Dharma turns as a whole. The womb of a donkey gives birth to a noble horse. Each time you look, you'll see it new. And in this way, we can heal our karma. So just let the light of your own awareness illuminate your inner world, which will help light the way as you step outside the door. Do the next thing on the schedule, follow along, and just see what comes up.